Hey, it's Matt, and I'm in Akihabara. And I have a bit of a controversial opinion that I wanted to share, and this is the perfect place to do it. I think the Japanese government should make anime a protected regional designation, just like the French government does for cultural products like champagne or cognac. Now, this might seem like kind of a strange thing. How would one go about protecting an aesthetic, and is that even a good idea? Well, the reason I'm saying this is because there has been a huge influx of anime-styled products that are now coming onto the market from producers outside of Japan. You can see it in animation, but it's really mostly visible in the game space, and in particular in the mobile game space. There is a huge number of games coming out right now that feature aesthetics directly inspired by Japanese anime art. And most of them are coming out of places like China and Korea, some out of Singapore, a few out of other places, but mainly Asian nations. And this makes a lot of sense because the Japanese anime industry has been outsourcing the work of in-betweening, which is kind of like the grunt work of doing all of the animated movement in between the keyframes. They've been outsourcing that to Asia, Korea, China, also places like Thailand and Vietnam for a very long time now. So there is a huge amount of know-how in Asia about how to make Japanese animated styles because people are getting paid to do it. And it also makes sense that when these countries would make products of their own, that they would use this aesthetic. Anime is a globally recognized art form, style, medium. It is one of the few things that most people around the world seem to agree on, regardless of what your age or gender or nationality or your politics are. People really love Japanese manga and anime, and the stylizations of it are such that they can make almost anything seem appealing or cute or fun. I mean, this sort of style is what powers manga and anime to become such popular global products around the planet today. Japan is actually making more money from anime and manga abroad than it is from its domestic marketplace, which is a really wild thing when you consider the fact that manga and anime were pretty much only made by Japanese for Japanese people for the vast majority of its existence in the post-war era. It's only been in the last, I would say, 20 years or so, and really only in the last 10, that they've taken off and truly become mainstream global products, not just Japanese. So back to anime and why I think that it should be a regional designation, a protected designation. Anime was coined in 1963 to refer to specifically animation that was produced in Japan for the Japanese marketplace, not imported from abroad. Until 1963, when Astro Boy, which was created by a Japanese manga artist named Osamu Tezuka, came on the Japanese marketplace, there were no anime television series. They only had imported ones like the Flintstones or Popeye, which was hugely popular here. Astro Boy was the very first 30-minute or 25, whatever it is with commercials, television series to be made in Japan. And it pioneered a lot of the stylistic flourishes that we now take for granted today. These were budgetary in nature, the reason being that they didn't have as much money to make cartoons in Japan as foreign producers did. So they had to rely a lot more heavily on things like fixed frames and the camera kind of sliding over the fixed frame, or static poses, or just animating the mouth, not the entire scene. Those were cost-saving measures of anime in the 1960s, but they became kind of stylistic flourishes, and they're widely used even in modern animation when the budgets are bigger today, and even widely copied abroad by foreign creators who have been inspired by anime. Now, I think it's really awesome that people all over the world are being inspired by anime, and I would never suggest that, people stop trying to recreate what inspired them or stop trying to emulate or make homages to things they think are really cool. When I say to make anime a regional designation, I'm not saying that people all over the planet should be shut out of drawing in whichever way they want. But I do think anime is a product of a very specific environment, the Japanese environment. And I don't necessarily even mean that culturally. I also mean it from logistically, from a business standpoint. Like, you wouldn't get things like Shonen Jump based anime without Shonen Jump magazine, which is made for the Japanese marketplace and sold here, and is all of the manga that are in Shonen Jump are the product of a very Japanese production system. So when I watch anime or read manga, I feel like I am engaging in a cultural conversation. I am consuming something that is from a very specific cultural milieu. Now, when I see anime style being used by creators abroad, it doesn't bother me. I think it's actually really cool, but it's not anime to me. And I know that this is really a controversial take for a lot of creators because they see anime as integral to their identities as creative people. And I respect that too. But to me, anime, again, is a product of a very specific cultural milieu, a very specific cultural environment. It doesn't make it any better or worse. You know, to bring this back to the concept of champagne, right? Just because something is not called champagne doesn't mean it's not a really good sparkling wine. Or just because something isn't called cognac doesn't mean that it's not a very good aged brandy. The reason that France instituted these protections for those cultural products, those liquors, is because they want to protect the heritage of their creation. It was the people of Champagne, that region in France, that made champagne, it was their hard work that made champagne so famous and popular and beloved and prestigious around the world. Similarly, it is the hard work of people in Japan that made anime so prestigious all over the world. So when everybody starts calling their product anime, in essence, nothing is anime. It becomes diffuse, it becomes genericized, it becomes less descriptive of a term. So I would think that it's a really good idea if the Japanese government would consider, and they haven't said anything about this. Let me be 100% clear about this. This is just my idea. I think it would be a good idea for the Japanese government to consider giving this kind of regional protected status to anime, because we are seeing anime and anime style products spreading throughout the world so much. So if you want to maintain what's special about anime made in Japan, you might need a little bit of extra protection from something like a regional designation. That wouldn't prevent people from making anime style stuff outside of Japan at all. In fact, it might actually accelerate it, because anime would be recognized as a prestigious sort of title that could only be applied to things made in Japan. But again, I think that this is just a question of heritage. It's a question of respecting the architects of a style. It's a question of my love for a medium that brought me to Japan. And it isn't intended in any way to disparage people who are making anime-style products outside of Japan. But it's just an interesting question, one that Japan really hasn't had to wrestle with before, because anime hasn't been popular outside of Japan in the way that it is now. Previously. I mean, there's been booms and things like that before, but now anime is here to stay. It is a major Japanese cultural export. The Japanese government, in fact, is going to be heavily relying on anime as one of the pillars of its economic strategy going forward. This is all the more reason for Japan to recognize anime as a protected designation, so that other countries and other people can't just assume the prestige that comes with it. Japan's population is really declining, it's really aging, and so traditional ways of building your economy, like manufacturing, aren't going to be as viable for Japan in the future going forward. They're going to be depending more and more on cultural products to keep their economy going, to keep their people going. So recognizing anime might be another way to ensure that they are able to get as much value from this cultural product as they can in the years going forward. Again, I hope everybody out there who's inspired by anime to make their own thing continues doing it. I think it's really cool. I love seeing your stuff. I love seeing all that kind of creativity. But to me, anime is anime. It's made in Japan. And yeah, just some deep thoughts from here in Akihabara. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. I'm going to put a link to an essay that I wrote about this in the description below. And please share with your friends, and also never hesitate to let me know what you think. I want to hear your comments about this, your opinions. Let's get into it in the comments below. Catch you next time.